The C-17 Globemaster's massive cargo bay was dimly lit. Only the red glow of emergency lights illuminated the faces of my fellow soldiers. We were packed in tight, our gear strapped down around us. A low hum vibrated through the plane, a constant reminder that we were hurtling towards a war zone. Exhaustion from the long flight battled with nervous anticipation. We were finally about to touch down in Afghanistan. As the wheels screeched against the tarmac at Bagram Airbase, the reality of our situation hit me with full force. The air outside was thick with the smell of jet fuel and dust. It was the middle of the night, but the darkness was pierced by blinding floodlights. Heavily armed soldiers patrolled the perimeter, their faces grim beneath their helmets. This was not a training exercise. This was Afghanistan. Stepping off the plane, I was immediately struck by the sheer scale of the base. It sprawled out before me, a city of tents, barracks, and aircraft hangars, all surrounded by towering blast walls and razor wire. The air was thick with tension, a palpable sense of danger that hung over everything. This was a place where the stakes were high, where every day brought new risks and uncertainties. As I shouldered my pack and joined the line of soldiers making their way towards the processing center, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just stepped into another world. This was a place unlike any I had ever seen before, a harsh and unforgiving landscape where the line between order and chaos was razor thin. This was Afghanistan, and I was now a small part of its complex and ever-evolving story. Bagram Airbase was a whirlwind of activity, even in the dead of night. Trucks rumbled past, kicking up clouds of dust that seemed to permeate everything. Soldiers in full battle rattle hurried to and fro, their voices a low murmur against the constant drone of generators and aircraft. The air crackled with an undercurrent of nervous energy. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of the dangers that lurked beyond the base's perimeter. Guard towers loomed over the landscape, manned by soldiers scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble. Razor wire fences stretched as far as the eye could see, a stark reminder of the constant threat of attack. Even the simplest tasks, like walking to the mess hall for a meal, felt fraught with risk. Despite the constant reminders of danger, there was a strange sense of normalcy that pervaded life on base. Soldiers joked and shared stories, finding moments of camaraderie amidst the chaos. There was a shared sense of purpose that united us, a common understanding that we were all in this together. As the days turned into weeks, I began to acclimate to the rhythms of life at Bagram. The dust, the noise, the ever-present danger, it all slowly faded into the background, becoming just another part of the surreal reality of this place. I was a soldier in a war zone, and this was my new normal. Our first official briefing on the ground was sobering. A grizzled sergeant, his face weathered by years of deployments, stood before us. He spoke with a blunt honesty that cut through the fog of jet lag and disorientation. We were briefed on the rules of engagement, the ever-present threat of IEDs, improvised explosive devices, and the recent enemy activity in our area of operation. He pointed to a large map on the wall, dotted with red and blue markers. Each marker represented a firefight, an IED attack, or some other incident of violence. The map painted a stark picture of the challenges we faced, the constant dangers that lurked just beyond the relative safety of the base. We were not here for a peacekeeping mission. This was a real war, with real consequences. The briefing also covered the more mundane aspects of life on base: the location of the mess hall, the recreation facilities, and the communication center where we could call home. But even these seemingly ordinary details were tinged with the reality of our situation. Every phone call was a reminder of the loved ones we had left behind. Every meal, a reminder of the comforts we had left behind. As the briefing concluded, I felt a knot of apprehension tightening in my stomach. We had been warned, prepared for the worst. Now, it was time to face the reality of our mission in this unforgiving land. Amidst the dust, heat, and constant reminders of war, Bagram Airbase held a bizarre secret, the Bagram Bazaar. This makeshift marketplace, a collection of stalls and shops run by local Afghans and international vendors, offered a surreal escape from the harsh realities of the war outside. Here, you could find everything from Afghan rugs and jewelry to knockoff designer clothing and electronics. Soldiers could purchase souvenirs, snacks, or everyday necessities. The bazaar was a strange mix of capitalism and conflict, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, even in the most challenging of circumstances. The presence of corporate businesses at Bagram, contracted to provide various services, added another layer of surrealism to the experience. Fast food chains, coffee shops, and even a Subway restaurant had set up shop, offering a taste of home in this far-off land. These businesses, while providing a sense of normalcy for the troops, also highlighted the complex economic realities of war. Walking through the bustling bazaar, I couldn't help but feel a sense of dissonance. The sights and sounds of commerce seemed jarringly out of place against the backdrop of war. It was a stark reminder of the strange juxtapositions that defined life in Afghanistan. Section 5. Shifting Sands, the elusive mission objective. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself grappling with a nagging question. What exactly were we fighting for? The initial clarity of our mission, to defeat the Taliban and bring stability to Afghanistan, seemed to blur with each passing day. The enemy was elusive, the political landscape complex, and the end goal seemed to shift like the sands of the Afghan desert. We were engaged in a new kind of war, one without clear front lines or decisive victories. The enemy was everywhere and nowhere, blending in with the local population, striking when and where we least expected it. We were fighting a war of attrition, a slow and grinding conflict that seemed to have no end in sight. The absence of traditional military objectives made it difficult to gauge our progress. We were no longer fighting to capture territory or defeat a conventional army. Our mission had become more about winning hearts and minds, about building a stable and secure Afghanistan from the ground up. It was a noble goal, but one that felt frustratingly out of reach. The longer I served in Afghanistan, the more I realized that there were no easy answers, no simple solutions to the complex challenges we faced. The war was a tangled web of political, social, and economic factors, and there was no clear path to victory. Section 6. On Call for Heroes. The life of a CSAR crew member. As part of a combat search and rescue helicopter crew, our mission was clear: to be the lifeline for those in need, the beacon of hope in the darkest of hours. We trained tirelessly, honing our skills to a razor's edge, knowing that every second counted when the call came. Our helicopter, a Sikorsky HH-60 Pavehawk, was our chariot, a symbol of hope and resilience in the face of danger. We lived on a 24/7 operational schedule, always ready to launch at a moment's notice. Whether it was a downed pilot behind enemy lines, a medical evacuation for a wounded soldier, or a humanitarian mission to deliver aid to remote villages, we were the ones called upon to navigate the treacherous Afghan skies. The weight of responsibility was immense, knowing that lives hung in the balance with every mission. We flew low and fast, hugging the terrain to avoid enemy fire, our senses on high alert for any sign of danger. The roar of the engines, the whine of the rotors, the constant chatter on the comms, these became the soundtrack of our lives. Each successful mission brought a sense of profound satisfaction, knowing that we had made a difference, that we had brought someone home safe. But the ever-present danger, the knowledge that each flight could be our last, cast a long shadow over our work. Section 7. Skirmishes and Standoffs. The face of modern warfare. Gone were the days of large-scale battles and easily identifiable enemies. The war in Afghanistan had morphed into a different beast altogether, a shadowy conflict fought in the shadows, a constant game of cat and mouse. We faced an enemy that was both cunning and ruthless, an enemy that blended in with the civilian population, using guerrilla tactics and improvised weapons to deadly effect. Skirmishes were sudden and brutal, often erupting without warning. We would be on patrol, driving through bustling marketplaces or desolate stretches of desert, when the silence would be shattered by the crackle of gunfire or the deafening boom of an IED. The adrenaline surge was immediate. our training kicking in as we scrambled for cover, returning fire and calling for support. There were also tense standoffs, moments frozen in time when the threat of violence hung heavy in the air. We would encounter groups of armed men, their intentions unclear, their fingers hovering near their triggers. These were tests of nerve, of judgment, of trying to decipher a situation that could escalate into a firefight in the blink of an eye. This was the face of modern warfare. Unpredictable, asymmetrical, and utterly unforgiving. It was a war fought not just with bullets and bombs, but with intelligence, technology, and the constant struggle to win hearts and minds. Section 8. Reflections on Duty. Honor amidst uncertainty. As my deployment wore on, I found myself reflecting on the nature of duty, of service, of sacrifice. We were here, in this harsh and unforgiving land, because our country had called upon us. We had raised our right hands and sworn an oath to defend our nation, to uphold the values of freedom and democracy. And so, we served, even in the face of uncertainty, even when the mission seemed unclear, even when the enemy remained hidden in the shadows. We were not policymakers, strategists, or politicians. We were soldiers, and our duty was to follow orders, to execute our mission to the best of our abilities. We believed in the ideals that had led us to this war, even as we grappled with the messy realities on the ground. There were moments of doubt, of course, moments when the human cost of war weighed heavily on my mind. But there was also a deep sense of camaraderie, a shared bond forged in the crucible of combat. We relied on each other for support, for strength, for a sense of purpose in the midst of chaos. And so we served, with honor and with courage, knowing that our presence, however flawed or imperfect, represented something larger than ourselves. Section 9. The Weight of Legacy. A Soldier's Contemplation. In the quiet moments between missions, under the vast Afghan sky, I found myself contemplating the weight of history. We were not the first soldiers to walk this land, to fight and bleed on these ancient battlegrounds. For centuries, armies had clashed on this soil, empires had risen and fallen, and countless lives had been lost in the pursuit of victory, of power, of ideology. What would our legacy be, I wondered? Would our sacrifices be remembered? Or would they fade into the annals of history, another chapter in the long and bloody saga of Afghanistan? Would we be remembered as liberators, as occupiers, or as something in between? I had no easy answers, only more questions. But I knew that we were shaping history, however small our part. Our actions, our decisions, our sacrifices would have ripple effects that extended far beyond the battlefield. And so we carried on, bearing the weight of history on our shoulders, hoping that our efforts, however imperfect, would contribute to a brighter future for this war-torn land. Section 10. Farewell to Afghanistan. A bittersweet departure. The day finally arrived. Our tour of duty was over. As I boarded the C-17, the same type of aircraft that had brought us here all those months ago, a wave of emotions washed over me. There was relief, of course, at leaving behind the constant danger, the dust, the heat. But there was also a sense of sadness, a feeling of unfinished business. Afghanistan had gotten under my skin, had become a part of me in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. I had witnessed both the best and worst of humanity, had seen unimaginable suffering and extraordinary acts of courage. I had made lifelong friends, had lost brothers in arms. I had grown, changed, been forever altered by my experiences in this land of contradictions. As the plane lifted off, soaring above the rugged Afghan landscape, I couldn't help but look back one last time. The setting sun cast long shadows across the mountains, painting the scene in hues of orange, purple, and gold. It was a sight of breathtaking beauty, a stark contrast to the violence and destruction I knew lurked beneath the surface. Afghanistan, I realized, would always be with me, a bittersweet memory etched into the fabric of my soul. I had left a part of myself on those dusty battlefields, but I had also gained a profound understanding of the human condition, of the enduring power of hope, and of the true meaning of sacrifice.